Okay, so let's try to go over patch 12.10 patch notes. There's a lot of changes, and I've been told by a lot of people that this patch will single-handedly change the entire game. And that's actually really good for the game. That's how League of Legends keeps their game fresh. That's how MOBAs are supposed to have longevity. And so I welcome this change. For the past 4 years or so, AD carry has pretty much felt the exact same. And it's honestly, there's lots of room for improvement here. So let's go over the patch highlight, where this is what everyone's mainly focusing on, right? There's nerfs to Grievous Wounds, Heal, Shields, and Spell Vamp. Lots of healing, lots of shielding. This is a really, really big nerf because there's been a lot of big sustained fights, and there's also lots of one-shot potential. That's what makes these two have to counteract with each other, right? Because the only ways to beat heals and shields is you don't try to make the fight longer, you try to one-shot as fast as you can. The second thing we're going to focus on is the champion durability update, where we're going to talk about how everyone is going to get these basic stats. So every champion is going to get pretty much a Doran starter item worth of HP. About level 9, they're pretty much going to get a Ruby Crystal worth of HP. Armor and MR, it's going to scale a little bit harder, so you're not going to have to invest as much into these really defensive armor items in the early game. I personally, for the past 4 years, I have taken a different rune approach, where I can show you here on my client. That's the wrong one. Yeah. So here, in most of my runes, if I'm going at AD carry, typically I'll have lethal tempo. Let's go just a standard rune page. And let's say I'm playing something like Jinx, right? If I'm playing versus an AP mage, or if I'm playing versus something like an AD carry and an AP mage, or even an enchanter who's AP based, I'll typically take a rune page like this on my mini runes, because having early armor and MR matters so much more than having just a bonus 9 AD, whether you believe it or not. Because you can still last hit and you're only missing like maybe 6 damage in your auto attack. It's much better to have these more defensive stats, because not only are you dealing a little bit less damage, you're denying them their damage. Alright. So I'm not going to go over all of these champions, obviously, because they're applying a bunch, and as you can see, do this little simple scroll down. We have to deal with a lot of champions. I'm mainly going to be focusing on ADs only. So pretty much, as they say, everyone's going to get the stat package. Thrash is going to get a little bit something different. All right. Healing, shielding, sustain, and Grievous Wounds. Healing is reduced by 10% early game, 28% in later phases of the game. Varies by champion. So in the early stages of the game, healing is going to be reduced just by a little bit. And as the game goes on, when your healing gets even bigger, such as Soraka heals, Sona heals, it's going to get a little bit worse. But because everyone's getting tankier, this makes more sense, right? Because imagine people were tanky or got that bonus tank durability and the healing was still the same. No one would die, and the game would just be a stall out for the longest time. Shielding on event reduced by 10%. That's pretty big. It pretty much means that champions that go Eclipse, champions that go Riftmaker, all this stuff like that, they go for these really extended fights on Omnivamp. This is why Ravenous Hunter was nerfed so many times. They're reducing that. Shielding, obviously, this would go hand in hand with people getting tankier. Grievous Wounds going from 40% reduced healing to 30%. Because there is less healing, there's no need to just gut it even more. So they have to buff it to where it's only 10% less, or 10% more. Whichever way you look at it. Enhance, yep, 60 to 50, same thing. Let's read this. With these updates, you can expect fights to last a little longer. The goal is not to make games last longer, but to rather nerf a few systems. Sunfire Aegis, Moonstone Renewed, Demonic Embrace, and Conditioning. That could dominate the game if left unchecked. League of Cleavers, anyone? Oh, I remember this. We don't want to pre-nerf potentially OP champions this patch, but we're confident these systems could warp up items and rune choices if left unchecked. Rune choices, I don't think it's going to change much. I think runes always have their own individual play here. Maybe it's that some people, instead of going grass, they'll go conquer now because it just lasts longer. But I don't know. Those runes mainly apply to tank players or top laners. All right, first up on the list, we have Aphelios. Serum healing for basic attacks going from, I think that's a 3 to 10 to 2.5 to 9. Not too big, honestly, just like a 0.5 to a 1% nerf. It's not that big. Healing from abilities, 9 to 30 to 8.3 to 30. Still, again, not that big, 0.7. In the early game, you don't really use your Severum all that much to regen HP. It's kind of like a little bit of a lifesteal gimmick. But typically when you want to like regen a lot of HP from Aphelios using an ability, you typically pair it up with your Infernum because that gives you the most amount of lifesteal back. Overheal shielding unchanged. Yeah, the shielding wasn't really a big issue on Aphelios. And the heal upon champions hit. I'm not gonna lie, it's very rare that you see an Aphelios player actually use R Severum to heal up because there's more value in other ultis that you can use, like gun ultis. But this is a pretty good nerf because on the chance that people do value this because it does have its purpose, it does matter a lot if he still healed the regular amount when everyone else was getting a nerf. Let's see. Next AD carry. Kai'Sa, R shield 75, 100 is 125 to 70 to 110. They're nerfing the AP ratio again. They're nerfing the AD ratio. This makes sense. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of people when they play Kai'Sa, they normally don't actually think about the R shield when they're using it. They typically only think about using it just to gap close and maybe just to like reposition their W. I personally use R shield as a form of attack or R as a auto reset, but I do understand the shield is very, very helpful. It's just that for some reason Riot chooses to nerf this ability in the shielding aspect a lot of the times when you can just nerf it just based off the duration rather than the size of it, in my opinion. But this isn't actually going to be that big of a nerf to Kai'Sa shield, as this is one of the lesser important parts of the R ability. Wow, they really haven't focused on AD carry in here. It's mainly just the supports and the top laners. Oh, we can look at Senna. So the heal is going to go from 40 to 110 to 40 to 100, and the lethality or the bonus AD is going to go down to 10. Lethality is going to stay normal. So the Q ability is not that different. It's basically just going down with everything else because of the healing, just to make sure that everything's balanced on time or balanced with everything else. R shield 120 to 200, 100 to 200. Nothing too big actually. It's just a flat 20 nerf. I don't think this will actually matter that much. Okay, Seraphine, I'm gonna look over her because you can play Seraphine as an AP carry bot lane. So W shield's gonna be nerfed by a little bit. W heal shield per ally. Nothing too crazy. Actually, wait. Ooh. Target's missing health. Okay. So this ability is now better for when your teammates are lower rather than just using it as a flat healing amount. Although I'm not sure if this is applied generally, but if this is a new thing they're adding on now, then this is going to be a little bit better for playing Seraphine support. Because for the longest time, Seraphine support really didn't offer much. She's basically a worse version of Sona in lane, which is pretty hard. The only thing she provided better than Sona was a little bit of wave clear, but sometimes that can hurt your lane rather than benefit it. Sona, Soraka, Swain. Alright, Grievous Wound go from 40 to 30. Okay, nothing too big there. And that might actually just be it, because everything else is just items. So let's go over items actually. Let's think about what we can build here. I think everything is just being nerfed by the standard Grievous Wounds, and that's all they're having. They're also nerfing Magic Pen. That's interesting. 35 to 30%, 20 to 18%. These are still going to be very, very popular items. I do think that there's going to be potential room for AD carries building Black Cleaver. I think Black Cleaver AD carries might actually make a show up, because if people are getting tankier and healing and shielding is getting a little bit nerfed, then I think having a higher base HP thanks to Black Cleaver would help a lot. But I'll do some testing on that and I'll get back with my findings. Moonstar Renewer. So pretty much the heal is going down by 10, 6 to 5, and plus 10 to plus 8. That's interesting. I don't really play that many Moonstorm and newer champions. Most of the time, when I do get support, I typically play a hook champion. But on the chances that I do end up playing Soraka and Karma or Lulu and stuff like that, and I do build Moonstone, I think this is actually going to be a very, very decent nerf to the item, because 10 healing along with these bonus like reduced healing stats is actually going to make a meaningful difference. Let's see. Death Stance, heal from 175 to 150 bonus AD. Okay, that doesn't really matter much to us AD carries. 3.6 to 3%. That's actually going to hurt just a little bit. Divine Sunder. Divine Sunder was already only built on like Ezreal in terms of ADC. So this is going to hurt just a little bit. I don't think it's going to completely take it out, but considering that Divine Thunder was already one of the lesser built Sheen items on Ezreal, I don't think we had to worry about that too much. Let's see, Wrath, Gore Drinker, Mob, 10%, 12 to 10%. This is still going to be one of the better MR items you can build on ADC. It's still going to be probably Death's Dance Mob meta, because I think that these items have way too good of stats outside of just their healing that just is honestly just really insane that I don't think many people can deal with. So we're definitely going to not acknowledge these as big nerfs. What is that? 8 to 7%. That's 1%. This is 2% nerf. Overhealed shield from 50 to 350 to 50 to 320. This is a very situational item. I don't think I've seen a lot of AD carries build Bloodthirster unless like you have a very big front line and the enemy team is low damage for you to consistently heal up. Bloodthirster has been a very underwhelming ADC item for a while, simply because that when you get to the Bloodthirster stage, you're typically going to be building as a 5th item. And by that point, you have a little bit more value just building Guardian Angel or other defensive items other than Bloodthirster. But we'll see how if this item makes a random comeback, because now that we're not really focused on stats and the game fights last longer, people are tankier, Bloodthirster might make a comeback here. Immortal Shield Bow, 6 to 7%. Wait, I don't know, that's 8. That's 8. 10 to 8 for on Bloodward. And the shield is going from 275 to 700 to 250 to 630. So that's actually a pretty big nerf. But as we kind of knew, Immortal Shield Bow was already a pretty gutted mythic item for ADCs. The only ADCs that built it at this point were pretty much Samira and Callista. So I don't think this item will really make that much of a difference. I think that Kraken Slayer will have so much value this patch, simply because if everything goes as according to plan and tankiness does pretty much run the game, I think champions that build Kraken Slayer will come into mind. I'm actually going to make a Word document really quick, or not Word document, a notepad document really quickly, so I can show you guys like 4 AD carries I think are going to be really meta this patch, but not sure. Okay, Conquer is going to be nerfed by, is that 8? Oh, okay. Okay, so the Omni event of Conquer goes from 9 to 6 and 8 to 5. So pretty much what this means is when you're playing Ezreal, your rune is pretty much locked into just PTA or maybe even Lethal Tempo. I remember Lethal Tempo Ezreal was a thing for a little bit, and I don't think it's actually going to be that bad. So I think that Conquer on Ezreal might end up dying here. I'm not sure. Maybe this nerf is actually really, really useful to just match everything else. Maybe if they left Conquer just a little bit stronger, then it would be way too broken. But I can't be completely sure. Overheal. It's only busted like minus 1% max HP. Doesn't really matter that much. ADCs don't really play off their max HP pool. So Overheal on the AD carries that you usually take this on, such as Zeri, sometimes Jinx. Actually, no, not Jinx. Maybe Caitlyn and stuff like that. It'll still be useful. I think it's gonna be fine. Taste of Blood. This is gonna be a hidden OP rune that a lot of AD carries have taken for a really long time. That let's see how it changes. So it's gonna go from 18 to 35 to 16 to 30, 20%, 15%, 10% AP, 8% AP. So this is gonna hurt quite a bit. This little 5% nerf along with this base lifesteal nerf. I think that a lot of AD carries that are going to be going domination primary, such as going the Halo Blades like Kai'Sa and stuff like that, you're still probably gonna end up taking this because there's really no point in going the other runes, such as the cheap shot or the sudden impact. But this, you're gonna feel this. They're gonna feel this. Laning phase was pretty much gave you a little bit of scapegoat if you took Taste of Blood, such as like on AD carries like Vayne. But if you take this out of the equation, then this is you're definitely gonna feel it. Triumph, 12% to 10% of your missing HP. That's reasonable. It just nerfs everything else. All right, let's talk about the summoner spells. All right, we have Barrier and Heal. So Barrier is going to go down just by a tiny wincy bit. I don't know why they came to the conclusion of 411. That's a very odd number, but 411. Barrier as AD carry hasn't really been a thing in a really long time. Typically, the only time you end up going barrier is when you have an enchanter support who takes heal, and you don't really feel like taking exhaust or ignite or any other summoner, and so you just want to try to survive. It's been a really long time since Ardent meta, where the meta was pretty much just bot lane tries to survive, scale to 1 to 3 items, and you just go barrier heal, and you just never interact bot lane. That was the meta like way back. And so I'm not sure if this is going to come back, but it'll be interesting. Maybe. Because when you're playing these kind of lanes, you might have a better time going just exhaust if you don't plan on fighting. But if you want to be a little bit aggressive, there is going to be a hack that if I believe that this meta is going to come back, I'm going to show you guys how to do. So heal 90 to 340, 80 to 318. Heal is still pretty much going to be the same value. Just getting a 10% minus heal nerf isn't really going to matter that much. Typically, you take heal just to make sure that you're healing as much as you can before an ignite hits, and then you're using it for the movement speed anyways. So I think heal's going to be fine. Ignite going from 60 to 50, not too big. All right. Dragons, Mountain Soul. The shield's going to be renewed. They're going to be nerfed a little bit. Okay. Ocean Drake. Ocean Drake's gonna be really the biggest one, right? Because Ocean Drake is one of the biggest win cons in terms of Ocean Souls or Drag Souls. So, backing buff health regeneration 2 to 10 to 2 to 8. Still pretty useful. Just starting off at a 2 base and only going down by 2%. You normally don't feel the healing regeneration at around 3rd or 4th drag, because at that point you already have really insane innate healing just off like your champions, and so you don't really feel it at this point. But what you do feel is this soul. So 160 is going down to 130. It's going down by a whole 10% and going to go down by 2 bonus HP. I think this actually might have not knocked this down below Mountain Drag. No. I think just innate healing just off poke is still really OP. But you're definitely not going to be able to sit there in a poke comp of just permanently spamming your abilities and you just stay at full HP the entire time. So this is not going to be as valuable anymore, but you still obviously want the Ocean Soul. Like, it's not something you want to fight to the death for anymore, I feel like. Oh god, we really just... anything that happens in the LCS finals just gets insta-patched in. Okay. So attack damage doesn't matter. Maximum attack damage doesn't really matter. 40 minutes. Okay. More corruption. Yeah, this is the big one. If you guys don't know, Santorin basically had a play where it was TO versus EG in semifinals of LCS Spring, and Santorin basically missed a smite because as the time ticked to the next minute, Baron healed. So this is going to be easier for junglers to not miss smite on just random occasions. It's going to make it less luck based, unless like you're just fighting Baron for 30 seconds, which in that case you deserve to just have a random fucky wucky. Okay. Outer turret AD 152 to... oh wait. Turrets deal more damage now. Okay. So basically, sorry, things are just fucking clogging my throat. Basically, this pretty much means that when you try to dive on any lane, it's gonna hurt a little bit more. I don't think this is gonna matter too much in terms of the solo lanes, but what I will say is it's gonna hurt a lot for bot lane. Why? Because the hypothetical of what's gonna happen is people are thinking that bot lane is gonna revert to hyper carries mixed with Ardent champions, and so when you have these enchanter champions, diving is very unlikely unless you have a tank jungler. So that's why this damage buff is gonna be huge. So if you're trying to dive as a bot lane, you better get that kill and get out immediately, because your enchanter can't tank this. As an AD carry, you can't tank it either. Okay, Swain, Talia, don't really care. Short comment on Duo. I think Riot should bring this back. I think removing Duo and trying to consistently nerf it is such a bad time. League of Legends becomes less and less fun as the game goes on. That's just a short little thing on my part. And that is the patch rundown for 12.10. All right. So let's go into Okay, let's go into the few things that I think are going to be different. So what I think will change in 12.10. So this is the first time I ever read this patch notes, and this is what I'm going to think is what's going to happen. So I think bruisers are still going to be relevant. I think bruisers are still going to be relevant because their items are still so insane. Yes, there's going to be nerfs on items such as I feel like Gore Drinker and stuff like that, but just like the basic raw stats of them, they're still going to be good, especially with bruisers such as Fiora and Irelia and Camille having that true damage in their kit. It's still going to be very, very strong that bruisers are going to be counted as tanks. But what I will also think is tanks will be very needed. I think tanks will be very needed in both jungle and top. I think the tank is going to be very needed in jungle top because as we are moving away from tank supports in the bot lane, we are now going to be missing these tanky targets on the team comp, and that's going to be supplemented by junglers and top laners. So because junglers typically have been going either bruisers or mages, I haven't really seen many tank junglers all that popular other than maybe Zac and Volibear. As we all know, like there's obviously these other picks such as like the full tank J4, but they're still not as tanky. They're kind of just there to make that engage. I think that tanks are going to be even more prominent now in the jungle role and the top lane role, just to fill that gap, because I think Leona and Alistar are going to be out of the meta. Don't get me wrong, in solo queue, tank supports are still good. Tank supports are still good. And this is mainly going to be for competitive and just a little bit of in high elo solo queue. The reason why I think tank supports are still going to be good in lower elos and overall is because I think for solo queue, tank supports have the ability to roam while enchanter champions aren't really able to roam right now. So when it comes to tank supports, they're still going to have that role. Just understand that you are not going to be as strong, like nowhere near as strong, by about like the 1 mythic mark. Usually that's when you're gonna get outscaled as a whole, where if you're gonna be a little bit tankier, but guess what, you're just gonna be outmatched if the healing is just way too much for your team to deal with. So what else do I think? This is gonna be the last thing. So list of ADCs I think will be super meta. So actually, one more thing here. Enchanter champs plus hyper carries will return. I think Enchanter champions plus hyper carries will return because there's a bigger durability patch. Enchanter champs that are very much prominent when it comes to long time fights. So that's where these champions pretty much shine, right? They just constantly heal over and over as the fight happens. And so because you're not going to pick these really insane in-lane carries, like AD carries with enchanters, you're typically picking things like Jinx, Vayne, Kog'Maw, all this other stuff. We're probably going to go back to seeing some really, really AIDS bot lanes where it's going to be like Vayne Lulu, Kog'Maw Lulu, maybe even Yuumi and some other things. All these enchanter champions that you're not going to be very fond of, they're going to come back and they're going to be paired with a hyper carry. So with that being said, here are the 80 carries I think are going to be really good. First and foremost, Vayne. Vayne is probably the easiest one that people are predicting to be good again, simply because that she is just the most well-known tank shredder of all time with her true damage in her kit. With a durability patch, it means that her laning phase is going to get easier. So why do I think Vayne's going to be good? OG tank shredder. Let's see. Durability patch gives her easier laning. And let's see, what else are we missing here? What else are we missing? I think that's it. I think these two things are pretty much all you need to just give reasoning for Vayne to come back into the lane. Because let's think about it, right? So yes, because Enchanter can come back into the meta with hyper carries, this is probably going to mean that Caitlyn Karma is still going to be relevant and they can still mess with Vayne. But because that people are getting tankier in general, if they buff Doran's shield, by the way, I think Vayne's going to be like just so faker. But I don't think they're going to do that. But just simply having Vayne giving these bonus stats, because that's what Vayne was missing all this time. I always was talking about how you can buff Vayne and balance her out. You can't give her more damage, more range, or anything, right? The only thing you can do to not make Vayne giga broken and just playable more in lane is giving her these bonus stats back that Riot took away a few seasons ago. And I'm glad they're implementing it back, so Vayne is indeed playable. Next to Vayne is, if your team needs AP, we got Kog'Maw. Because this little artillery cannon is pretty much doing the same thing as Vayne does, except he has the ability to have a lot more range. And he's going to be paired very, very well with an Enchanter Chant, especially with Lulu. So, the thing about Kog'Maw that you need to know is don't build Mythic. The main Kog'Maw build right now is something along the lines of you rush Bork into a Rage Blade, into a Titanic, or you can get a Hurricane. And from there, you pretty much build whatever you want. Either you go Wits, and maybe at the end, if you really want to, you can start building a Mythic. But these items are just so cheap and so value on Kog'Maw that you really don't need the Mythic when these items provide so much more. Alright. Outside of Vayne, hyper carries, as we all know, do not have much mobility. And so what is a hyper carry that scales well with an Enchanter champion that is known for catching out these AD carries? Varus. Varus, I think, is going to come back in the meta because he has the ability to catch out these opponents because of low mobility with his R. He also has a lot of burst damage. His passive gives him a lot of attack speed. He got buffed last patch, actually. And the last thing is, I do believe that Varus actually has a very, very build like Kaisa, where he can pretty much go AP or AD depending on what you need. If you want to go AP, you can go the Kraken Slayer into a Nashor's Tooth into just full AP, and that can pretty much one-shot a tank with your W. And if you're going to do that, definitely you're going to be maxing your E just to get that bonus HP percentage. And so that's why I think Varus is going to come back to the meta. So putting on the reasons. Catches immobile ADs. Catches immobile ADs. Hybrid builds. And it's still a hyper carry. The last AD that I think is going to also be meta again is, I think it's going to be Twitch. I think Twitch has a lot of potential to come back simply because Twitch had a really weak laning phase, right? Same problem as Vayne, but he's still a little bit weaker. But because if I predict that Enchanter champions are going to come back, such as the Lulu and the Yuumi, and people that can just permanently cover for an AD carry's weakness, this will make this champion come back because he is one of the OG 1v9 champions when hitting front to back, because he just has insane amount of base damage. He pick off these immobile AD carries if he gets a lead, and just, I don't know. There's so much about Twitch that's hard to explain, and it's why I don't really rate Twitch very highly on tier list to climb with, because the amount of knowledge you need to have on Twitch to make him work is very, very insane. But if you do know how to play Twitch, I think that there is room for Twitch to be one of the best AD carries to match up all of these, because Twitch actually ends up beating Vayne. If you didn't know this, Twitch is level 6, just presses W on Vayne and just spaces her out with his R. He pretty much kills Kog'Maw whenever he wants because he outranges Kog'Maw until Kog'Maw gets about level like 3 points in his W, maybe about 5, I'm not sure. But regardless, Twitch has a lot more burst damage than Kog'Maw initially. And for Varus, same thing. It's like the mix of these two, right? He's immobile, he has very little range, but he can get spaced out pretty much easily. But Varus does counter Twitch in the sense that if he does land his R, Twitch can get one shot. But if you have mobility and you have movement on Twitch, you should be fine. So that's going to wrap it up for my 12.10 assumptions and my rundown. I think that this is going to be a very interesting patch, and as people say, it's going to rework the entire change of the game. So I'm going to hop into some games right now, and we're going to see if what I think is going to end up working. All right, now I can read all this stuff. Sorry, I didn't want to focus on chat at all while I was making this because this is going to be a YouTube video later. So, yeah. Conk got wrecked for Rage Up. Hey, Dream, how do I request a coaching session? Hold on, I wonder if this works now. Coaching? There we go. We're going to change that command, but pretty much just join the Discord. I don't know if you're in there already, but exclamation point socials, join the Discord, and in that Discord there's going to be a coaching tab once you read the rules and you accept the little pencil to get a student role. And from there, you're going to be able to see all my different chat channels, all my